In the name of God, who is known to us in the Holy Trinity as Creator, Redeemer, and Sanctifier. Amen. There is a saying, there are none so blind as those who will not see. And in today's Gospel, we have that powerfully demonstrated for us. For we have Bartimaeus, he who is literally blind, and around him are those who will not see, who have a willed blindness which prevents them from seeing the one who is in their midst. In this morning's Gospel, Jesus and his disciples, and we're told a large crowd, are setting out on the road. They are on the move. They are moving between one city, one town, one village and another. They are on the way. When we are on the way, when we are in that moving space, we find ourselves in an in-between space, a space where we are neither at home nor have we reached our destination. This is a liminal space, a space where we encounter those who fall between. And it is here that we encounter Bartimaeus, out on the edges, out in between. Luis Menendez-Antuna writes of this passage this week that although the narrative does not offer more details, the reader realises that Bartimaeus is a liminal character, outside of the city, outside of the path, outside of the light, and outside of the economy. Bartimaeus, like many beneficiaries of Jesus' healing, embodies the effects of social exclusion. Menendez continues, we should also keep in mind that such a position most likely kept Bartimaeus from having a household. Although he is the son of, men in his situation would not be able to form a family, work to sustain himself and his dependents, or fulfil some obligations proper to civic and religious life. So out here in this in-between place, Jesus encounters Bartimaeus. Or more particularly, Bartimaeus finds Jesus in the midst of the place where he is. Bartimaeus cries out, gives voice to his position, gives voice to his situation, gives voice to his identity. But there are those in the crowd that would take that voice away from him. Be quiet, they say. Hush. They do not want Bartimaeus and all that Bartimaeus represents to disturb this moment, their moment, with Christ. They do not want Bartimaeus and all that Bartimaeus symbolises to take them from their intended destination, to change their way. They do not want to see Bartimaeus. By silencing him, they take away his voice, or attempt to, and take away his presence. But Bartimaeus is seen. Bartimaeus is heard. Jesus hears his cry and calls for him. And in that moment, we encounter others in the crowd, others who give voice to his situation, others who say to him, "Take heart, he is calling for you." In these two aspects of the crowd, we see two aspects of humanity: those who would walk by and not see, and those who see and recognise in the other the image of God, a child of God, a son, a daughter, are beloved. There are those who would not give that respect and identity, and there are those who say, "Take heart." Luis Menendez-Artuna says that it is extremely likely that Bartimaeus is homeless, out here on the edges, on the way, in this in-between place. His only protection is his cloak, which is both at once his home, his bed, and the source of his income placed in front of him for people to throw coins. Bartimaeus is out here in this in-between place, not in the village or the town or the city, where perhaps he could find and rely on the sympathy and support of those who knew him. Out here, he relies on being seen by strangers. He relies on being seen. Homelessness is one of the issues, one of the crises which confronts our society. And even though the number of people who are homeless and rough sleeping is great, often they remain invisible or unseen to many. In the 2016 census, on the night of that census, 116,000 people were identified as being without a home that evening. Of that 116,000, 58% were male, 21% were aged between 25 and 34, and 20% identified as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. In the next few years, that figure grew by at least 14%, so that in the years 2018 to 2019, the Australian Homelessness Monitor reported that 290,000 people were homeless during that time. That is a significant number who are homeless. During this season of pandemic, housing measures, income protection, and moratoria on eviction has reduced the number of homeless people. But as we emerge from this season, there is an increase reported in rough sleeping again. And I know the number of people that have come to my door in the last month seeking help or assistance has increased. And indeed this morning, as I walked in through the vestry door, there was clear evidence that someone had found shelter in the doorway last night. One of the ministries of our parish, of our community, that is vital, that for over 20 years, and especially through this season of pandemic, has continued, is our community lunch program. This lunch program does more than physically feed people. This lunch program and those who support and enable it see our guests. They offer dignity and respect and recognise the image of God, the child of God, in the other. These are ways in which we join ourselves with the crowd who see. And as Christians, we are called time and again to be people who see and give voice to those who are otherwise unseen or silenced by the community which finds their presence disturbing. We are the ones who can see the spikes that appear on ledges outside buildings to prevent people from sleeping there. We are the ones that can see the rising rental prices which force people increasingly out of a safe accommodation and into places that are unsafe or into homelessness. We are the ones who can give voice, for we have that ability to see, and in our privilege, we are called to see all. The crowd who give voice to Bartimaeus, who say, "Take heart, he is calling for you," are essential in facilitating a change of life for Bartimaeus. He throws off his cloak, this cloak which has been at once his home, his bed, his income. For in this encounter with Christ, Bartimaeus and the community are transformed. For he does not stay in this in-between place. He travels with the crowd. He has found community, for he is seen and valued for who he is. The cloak remains as a sign that he was there, but he has moved from this liminal space once more to being in communion with community. This is our call, to see those who fall between and to be the ones who facilitate transformation both of life and of community, so that no one remains in that in-between space. We have been given the gift of seeing, the gift of sight, and voice to name, for indeed there are none so blind as those who will not see. Amen.